wrestler could do. It's more a case of how you use them. And in that way, I find wrestling and writing to be very much the same. Good point. All right. It's not necessarily how many words you know, as my SAT scores would attest to, but it is how you use the words that you do know. And it's been said by some writers, it has been asked, why use a $10 word when a 10-cent word will do? And I will further that and say, why use a 10-cent word when a 2-cent word will do? And in my writing, I like to think that I make people ask questions. I like to think that I might inspire them a little bit. I might make them think about the paragraphs that have been written. And even in the case of the novel Tatum Brown, which one person here read, may cause them to think, have some deep thoughts about human nature and philosophy and things like that. But I do not want my writing to send people in pursuit of a dictionary to try to figure out the words that I'm using all by themselves. Now, I got into writing in a roundabout way, probably an unusual way. I was the first of the pro wrestlers to write a book, and I actually am proud to say that I forsook a ghostwriter, but I wasn't sure that was correct English, so I changed it midstream and said, so I decided not to use a ghostwriter. I do that. If you guys see me hesitating, it's because I'm not sure the word I'm about to use is grammatically correct. And as a #1 best-selling author, the words I use should be grammatically correct. So when given the choice between messing up in public and pausing to use an easier word, I'll go with the easier word. All right, so I opted not to use a ghostwriter. That was not the way that I was supposed to enter the world of literature. One day at WrestleMania in 1999, which was not a career landmark for me. That was the Mick Foley or Mankind Big Show match. Ouch. But it was important for other reasons. I wasn't pausing there to think of a better word. I was pausing because I had no idea what I was talking about. And I better go quick. I know we've got about 15 minutes here. But I was introduced to a writer and I was told, this is Lou, he's written 17 books, WWE, actually they called it WWF back then, had just signed a deal to do 3 autobiographies with Regan Books, which is a division of HarperCollins, and I was going to go first. And I think the reason was that Stone Cold and The Rock were next, or The Rock and Stone Cold were next, and they wanted me to be the guinea pig, because if somebody was going to fail, they wanted it to be me, because I was by far the least popular of the 3 guys. Don't get me wrong, I was pretty popular, but I wasn't on that level of Stone Cold or The Rock. And I had this writer with me, very nice man, and for about 8 hours the next morning after WrestleMania, he would ask me questions. Like, we'd be driving down the road, he'd be asking me questions like, what was my first girlfriend like? And what was my favorite food? What was my favorite dessert? And the following morning, after that next morning, he came up to me, picked him up at the hotel for another day together. We were going to spend a total of 3 days together, and then he was going to write my life story. And he has, on yellow legal paper, he has the first page of my book. And he says, take a look at it, Michael, I'm telling you, I'm a writing fool. Now, immediately, I should have realized something was wrong, because Michael is essentially the name that my kindergarten teacher used and my mother when she's really mad at me. Not a good sign when your autobiographer is using the incorrect name. And I read what he says, and it is almost to a word. I was baptized Michael Francis Foley, a typical Irish name if ever there was one. But my family was not the typical Irish vision of free-flowing beer on Saturdays and church on Sundays. Heck, I didn't even have my first communion until I was 19, an age when most of the kids on the block already had their first girlfriend. I mean, what type of girl would want to date a guy who hadn't had his first communion? And he said, what do you think, Michael? I told you I was a writing fool. I said, well, man, I didn't want to hurt the guy's feelings, but I had to be honest. I said, well, I've got a couple problems with it. He goes, well, okay, go ahead. I said, well, first of all, I think that most of the kids on the block have their first girlfriend when they're like 13, not 19. Am I right? I had my first girlfriend when I was 19, but I was a loser. And he said, okay, we can change that. Anything else? I said, yeah, I'm not sure that having that first communion is really a prerequisite for dating. You girls tell me, if you gather around in groups and say, I like him, he's funny, he's cute, but hasn't had that first communion yet. He said, okay, we can change that. Anything else? I said, yeah. I said, Lou, I didn't actually say any of that. I didn't say a single word of that. He goes, I know, that's what I do. I take what you say and I make stuff up. I make up quotes, I fill in the blanks. I make it sound just like you. And I know this may sound funny coming from a professional wrestler, but that struck me as being a little bit fake. Now the truth is, if he'd written a really good fake book, I probably wouldn't be up here talking to you guys today. But he sent me 5 chapters. I received the chapters at TV tapings. I went back to my hotel room to read them, and I don't know if you're like me, but if you are, you've kind of daydreamed about what your life would look like in either movie or book form. I know that I did. And I always daydreamed that I'd have an exciting life story, and the pages that Lou handed me were anything but. And I found myself, instead of just glancing at it, sitting up in bed and writing notes in the margin, and I saw him about a week later, and I said, yeah, let's go over some of this stuff. He said, okay, what are you going to do? I said, we were in a wrestling dressing room. There were guys talking in the back of the dressing room. Keep that in mind. And I said, well, like here it says, when I was 10, I wanted to be like Fonzie. He goes, yeah. I said, well, shouldn't we explain who Fonzie is? He said, well, who is he? I said, you guys know who the Fonz is, right? Yeah. All right, okay, hold that thought. Okay, I'm going to come on here in just a second. So I said, how about we say, when I was 10, I wanted to be like Arthur Fonzarelli, the Fonz from TV's Happy Days. No doubt about it, the Fonz was the man. Fix a broken jukebox with a slap of his palm, no problem, and chicks, well, the Fonz had them lined up out the door. One of the small pleasures of my life is to watch my son watching the Fonz at Nick at Night and knowing he thinks the Fonz is every bit as cool as I think. And he's writing it down. He goes, that's good, Michael, that's good, we can use that. And I said, how about at the end, write hey with like four Y's? He said, I can't do that. I said, why not? He said, it's not a complete sentence. So I called on Edge, who I was just asked a personal question about. You guys know the Edge situation? Oh, good, all right. You might want to look into it. Edge and Christian were back talking with the A-Train. And I said, hey, what did the Fonz used to say? And they all went, hey, and he went, all right, I'll do it, but I don't agree with it. I just got the idea. The idea really struck home when I went back over the first chapter. I had, as some of you might know, a bizarre ear accident that resulted in the loss of a good part of my right ear, which I will not show you. It's a matter of pride, unless you have $5. But anyway, I thought that would be a hook, a way to get people to read more, because every good book needs a good hook. Except when he wrote this hook, it didn't hook me. I didn't feel like he was explaining to the reader what it felt like to be trapped in the ropes, and to literally feel like I was passing out and could conceivably end up in a lot of trouble. And so I went into my room one night and I wrote down what it felt like to be in those ropes. And then I called the publisher and I said that, I wanted to give writing this book a try. Now, just try to remember, this is a very prestigious woman in the publishing world, and she hears what seems to be a professional wrestler telling her that he's going to write his own autobiography. And man, I was met with the kind of silence that usually greets an Al Snow match at Madison Square Garden. I like to make fun of Al Snow, okay? And so I said, how about if I send you a couple chapters and you see what you think? And she said, okay. Now, knowing human nature a little bit, I realized it'd be harder for her to turn down a lot of work than it would be to turn down a little bit of work. So I went to the Tallahassee Civic Center in Tallahassee, Florida.